They say neighbors are either your closest allies or your lifelong enemies. In my family's case, we definitely leaned toward the second. Ever since I can remember, my dad had it out for the man who lived next door, Mr. Carter. 49 years old, ex-military or something like that, with a square jaw and a calm kind of energy that somehow made my dad even angrier. They fought over everything. It started with the driveway. Ours was narrow and shared, which meant it was always a war over who parked where. If my dad left a tire over the painted line, Mr. Carter would leave a note. If Mr. Carter's muffler poked into our side, my dad would grumble for hours. Then came the music. Mr. Carter liked working on his car with the garage door open, classic rock blasting out into the afternoon air. My dad, a man of silence and lawn-mowing rituals, couldn't stand it. The arguments would spill into every holiday. Our Christmas lights, too bright. His porch lights, too dim. It didn't matter what the topic was. If it came from the other side of the fence, it was a problem. I think it reached a point where they hated each other more out of habit than anything else. But not me, and definitely not my mom. We kept things polite. My mom said it wasn't worth holding grudges with people you see every day. I agreed. I always thought Mr. Carter was kind, in his own quiet way. He didn't smile often, but when he did, it was warm, thoughtful, like he meant it. When I was younger, I used to play with his son, Tyler. He was a couple of years older than me, but we bonded over bikes and video games in the summer. I remember sitting in their living room, watching cartoons while his mom passed out lemonade. It felt normal back then, before the divorce. After Tyler's parents split up, he moved away with his mom, and Mr. Carter was left alone in that big house. I didn't see him much anymore, and when I did, he always seemed a little more tired, a little quieter. He still kept to his routines, washing his car every Sunday, fixing things around the house, walking his German Shepherd twice a day. But there was a kind of sadness about him that I couldn't explain. When I turned 19, I started noticing things differently. The house next door wasn't just the place where my dad's enemy lived. It was where someone lived who'd once opened his home to me. Someone I had memories with, even if they'd faded over time. It started small. Mr. Carter needed someone to watch the house when he worked late shifts, water the plants, feed the dog, bring in the mail. My mom volunteered me, said it would be neighborly. My dad wasn't thrilled, but I said yes anyway. At first, it was just a quick stop-in job. But soon, I started staying a little longer. I'd wait for him to come home, and we'd talk. Nothing major, just light stuff, weather, sports, music, but it felt easy, natural, like talking to someone who didn't expect anything from me. Mr. Carter wasn't the monster my dad made him out to be. He was thoughtful, sharp-witted, and surprisingly funny. He'd make little dry jokes that caught me off guard. And even though he didn't talk much about himself, when he did, I listened. He had a way of making silence comfortable. I never told my dad how often I went over. I didn't want the lecture. I knew what he'd say, that I was being naive, that the man was manipulative or up to something. But I knew that wasn't true. Mr. Carter always treated me with respect. He'd ask me about school, about what I wanted to do with my life. He even asked about my art once, when he saw me doodling in a sketch pad. Said I had a good eye. No one had ever said that to me before. There was something grounding about his presence. He didn't talk to me like I was a kid, and he didn't pretend to have all the answers. He just listened. That's how it all began. Not with anything big or dramatic, but with quiet talks, shared space, and a kind of unspoken understanding between two people who came from very different worlds, but somehow found comfort in each other. Looking back, maybe that's why I kept going back. Maybe, in a neighborhood full of noise and conflict, Mr. Carter was the only one who made me feel seen. And that, though I didn't know it yet, was the start of everything. It started with watering plants and ended with late-night conversations. I didn't expect Mr. Carter's job kept him out late. Long hours at the plant, overnight shifts, rotating weekends. He wasn't the kind of man to ask for help easily, but one afternoon he knocked on our door, holding a spare key and an awkward smile. "Would you mind feeding Rocky and watering the ferns while I'm gone this week?" he asked. "It's Not much, just a couple of days. I said sure. Simple enough. A few days turned into a few weeks, then months. And eventually I stopped knocking. I'd just slip in through the side door like it was second nature. At first, I'd feed the dog, check the thermostat, water the plants, and leave. But after a while, I'd wait. He'd come home just as I was finishing up, and instead of rushing out the door, I'd sit for a few minutes. Sometimes he'd offer me a soda or make a pot of coffee, and we'd talk. He had this old brown couch in the living room, a little worn on the arms, some stuffing peeking through on one cushion. That's where we sat, side by side, two people 10 feet apart in age, but somehow always finding things to talk about. Mr. Carter was full of surprises. He knew everything from fixing carburetors to baking banana bread. He once gave me a 10-minute speech on why vinyl records still sounded better than anything digital. I laughed more in those conversations than I had all year. He wasn't loud or dramatic, just easy to talk to. The kind of person who didn't try to impress you but did. Anyway, one night, after he got home from a late shift, I was still there. Rocky had fallen asleep with his head in my lap, and I didn't feel like moving. The TV was playing some old movie in the background, the kind where no one says much, but every glance means something. "Long day?" I asked as Mr. Carter kicked off his boots and dropped his keys in the bowl by the door. He nodded. "Yeah, feels like they're trying to squeeze 5 people's work into one body. Mine, unfortunately." He sat next to me, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of motor oil and coffee on his shirt. We watched the movie in silence for a while. Then he asked, "You ever been in love, Jamie?" The question caught me off guard. I don't know. I don't think so, I admitted. Crushes, sure. But love? Probably not. He chuckled softly. "You'll know when it happens. It's not subtle." I looked over at him. "Have you?" He nodded again. "A few times. Men and women. Doesn't really matter to me." That made me pause. I didn't say anything right away. Not because I was judging, but because I was surprised. I'd never seen him with anyone. Never even heard a rumor. "You're bi?" I asked, careful not to sound too shocked. He smiled a little. "Yeah. Why? Didn't expect that? I mean, I guess I never thought about it," I said honestly. "You don't really seem the type." "The type?" He raised an eyebrow. I laughed, embarrassed. "Okay, that sounded dumb. I just meant like, I don't know. I never saw anyone over here." He leaned back on the couch, arms resting along the top cushions. "How often are you watching my house, Jamie?" I felt my face flush. "Not that often," he smirked. "It's all right. I get it. I keep to myself these days." I shifted, unsure of where the conversation was heading. There was a quiet tension in the air, like a string stretched between us. Not quite pulled tight, but humming with energy. "I've never really thought about guys like that," I said softly. "But I'm not saying I haven't wondered." Mr. Carter turned his head toward me. Wondering's a start. The movie kept playing, but neither of us were really watching. The room felt warmer somehow. My heart was doing something weird in my chest. Skipping, fluttering, racing all at once. He didn't move closer. He didn't say anything more. He just sat there beside me, calm and still, letting the silence speak for both of us. It wasn't a moment full of declarations or decisions, just stillness and awareness. Nothing happened that night. No kiss, no touch, but something changed. And once something changes, it's hard to go back to how things were before. There's something about comfort that sneaks up on you. One moment, it's just a routine, a habit, and then, before you know, it's something you look forward to, something you crave. That's how it was with Mr. Carter. The more time we spent together, the harder it became to explain why I kept going over. Sure, Rocky needed to be fed, the ferns watered, but I could have done that in 10 minutes flat. Instead, I stayed, I lingered. I found reasons to be there when he came home, and he never seemed to mind. We started talking more. Not just about surface-level stuff like music or the weather, but real things. Life, regret, dreams we let slip. He told me he once wanted to be a writer before he joined the Navy. Said he used to scribble stories in the margins of his notebooks back in high school. What stopped you? I asked one night, sitting cross-legged on the carpet, tossing a tennis ball for Rocky. He shrugged. Life has a way of redirecting you, even when you don't ask it to. I guess I stopped believing anyone would care what I had to say. I looked at him for a long time. I would have read your stories. He gave a small, crooked smile and said, "That means more than you think." Our conversations grew more personal from there. He told me about his first real relationship, a woman he met while stationed in Guam. Then quietly, about a man he met after the divorce. I didn't even know what to call it back then, he admitted. Just knew. I felt something, stronger than I expected. I nodded, listening, trying to match the vulnerability he was showing me. I'd never thought deeply about my own identity before. I had dated a couple of girls in high school, kissed a few more at parties, but it always felt automatic, like I was doing what I was supposed to do. But now, I was noticing things I hadn't before, like the way Mr. Carter's eyes lit up when he laughed, or how calm I felt sitting next to him, even when we weren't saying anything at all. He had a way of making space for you, not just physically, but emotionally. He didn't press, didn't pry, he just let things unfold. One night, we were talking about music, of all things. I'd brought over an old playlist I'd made, and we were taking turns playing songs we liked. He queued up some 90s slow jam, something rich and full of harmonies, and leaned back on the couch with a sigh. "Man, this takes me back," he said. "Used to slow dance to this in the garage when no one was watching." "With who?" I asked before I could stop myself. He smiled at the ceiling. "A guy named Marcus. I was 23. Thought I'd marry him someday." I paused. "What happened?" "He left," he said simply. "Family didn't approve. Back then, that was enough to end things." There was a silence after that. Not awkward, but heavy. Full of things neither of us knew how to say. He looked over at me. "You ever wonder what your life would look like if you stopped trying to fit into what other people expect?" The question sat between us like a challenge. "I've been wondering that a lot lately," I admitted. "More than I ever thought I would." His eyes softened. "That's not a bad thing." I didn't answer right away. My hand was resting on the couch, cushion between us, fingers drumming lightly. I hadn't even realized his hand was close, just inches away. When our pinkies brushed, neither of us moved. I looked at him. He looked at me. And suddenly, the room felt impossibly quiet. The distance between us evaporated without a word. I didn't even realize I was leaning forward until his face was right in front of mine. Our noses nearly touched. I could feel his breath. See the tiny scar above his lip I'd never noticed before. Then, finally, it happened. The kiss was slow, gentle, hesitant at first, like we were both asking a question and hoping for the same answer. His lips were warm, slightly chapped, and when he pressed in just a little deeper, something in my chest tightened and released all at once. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't a movie scene. It was something quieter, something heavier. Like finding a part of yourself you didn't know had been missing. When we pulled back, neither of us said anything for a few seconds. "I wasn't sure you'd let that happen," he said softly. "Me neither," I replied. "But I'm not sorry." He smiled again. That small, quiet smile of his. Good. We didn't kiss again that night. But we sat there side by side, the space between us now different, charged, honest, real. I went home with my heart beating louder than usual, and a truth I hadn't been ready to admit now fully alive in my chest. I didn't know exactly what this was, but I knew I wanted more. After that first kiss, the world didn't spin faster. There was no dramatic music, no grand declaration of love. Just quiet, and 1,000 questions I didn't know how to ask. Mr. Carter didn't bring it up, and neither did I. For days afterward, we talked like we always had. About work, about school, about the dog's weird habit of stealing socks. Nothing changed on the surface, but something had. I felt it in the way I thought about him when I wasn't around. The way I found myself remembering how his hand brushed mine. How I caught myself wondering if he thought about it too. There was no map for what I was feeling. No rule book. No label that felt right. I only knew that being around him made something inside me feel still. Like the noise in my head finally quieted. A week passed, then another. One night I stopped by later than usual. My parents were out and I'd had a rough day. I don't remember why. Probably something small that just felt big. School pressure, friend drama, the weight of questions I couldn't answer. Mr. Carter opened the door, already in sweatpants and a t-shirt. He looked tired, but smiled when he saw me. "Rough night?" he asked. I nodded. "Mind if I hang out for a bit?" He stepped aside. "You know you're always welcome." We didn't talk much that evening. We just sat on the couch, the old movie on the TV barely registering. At some point, he handed me a mug of tea. At another, Rocky curled up next to my feet. The house was quiet, and I felt like I could finally breathe. Then, in the stillness, his hand found mine. He didn't say anything, just slid his fingers between mine slowly, gently. My pulse jumped. I didn't pull away. Instead, I turned toward him, and just like that, we were kissing again. This time, there was no confusion, no questions. It wasn't a test of boundaries. It was a choice. My choice. His lips were soft, familiar now. He kissed like he meant it. Like he didn't need to prove anything. Just wanted me to feel safe. And seen. When we pulled apart, I rested, my head against his shoulder. He didn't speak. He just held my hand tighter. From then on, things changed. Quietly. Gradually. We didn't define anything. There were no titles, no labels. Just a shared understanding that we meant something. To each other. Something real. There were nights I stayed late, and we'd sit close, shoulders touching. Sometimes he'd rest his hand on my knee. Sometimes I'd lean into his side and let my eyes close. Not from sleepiness, but because I felt safe. He never rushed anything. He never asked for more than I could give. He was patient, in a way that surprised me. One evening, after we watched an old comedy special, I turned to him and said, "You know you're the first guy I've ever felt this way about?" He looked at me, calm and steady. "Yeah?" I nodded. I always thought I was straight. I never questioned it, but this? You? It's different. It feels good. Right. He reached out and tucked a piece of hair behind my ear, a gesture so tender, so simple, that it made my chest ache. "You don't have to label it," he said. "Not for me. Not for anyone. You just feel what you feel. That's enough." I wanted to thank him, but the words didn't come out, so I just leaned in and kissed his cheek. He smiled. There were moments that felt like rituals, his hand grazing mine when I walked in, the quiet laughter that filled the spaces where awkwardness could have lived, the way he always made me a cup of tea before I left. We didn't need constant touch or physicality. It was the emotional connection that deepened everything. We were building something, slowly, carefully, honestly. I found myself thinking about him during the day, wondering how his shift was going, what he was having for dinner, whether he missed me when I wasn't around. I told him once, half laughing, that I looked forward to these visits more than anything else in my week. He didn't laugh. He just nodded, like he'd been feeling the same. "You make this place feel less empty," he said softly, "and that's not something I take lightly." It wasn't just about loneliness, or attraction, or rebellion. It was something deeper. The kind of bond that grows in the quiet, unnoticed moments. In the way he always remembered how I took my coffee, in how I never had to pretend around him. Some nights we barely talked. Other nights we shared things we'd never told anyone, about regrets, hopes, the things that kept us up at night. And sometimes all we did was sit together in silence, letting the world outside fall away. There was a calm between us that felt like truth, and even though no one knew, not my parents, not my friends, I didn't feel like I was hiding. I felt like I was discovering something real, something mine. Falling for someone in secret is strange. It's like living in two worlds at once, one that everyone sees and another only you can feel. I stopped hanging out with my friends as much. They'd text in the group chat about movie nights or weekend hikes, and I'd always have an excuse. Homework, a family thing, feeling tired. The truth was simpler. I just wanted to be with Mr. Carter. It wasn't about sneaking around or doing anything thrilling. It was about the way I felt when I was near him, calm, understood, and strangely complete. He never asked me to come over more, never pressured me to spend time with him. But the door was always open, and I kept walking through it. My parents didn't suspect a thing. My mom assumed I was studying more. My dad was just glad I wasn't loafing around with those video game buddies all day. He still ranted about Mr. Carter every few days, though. Always the same complaints. "That man's car blocks half the driveway again," he muttered one morning. "I ought to have it towed one day and see how he likes it." I sat at the table quietly, hiding a smile behind my coffee cup. If only he knew. If only he knew I'd spent last night curled up on that man's couch, laughing about a dumb sitcom we both secretly liked. If only he knew that the man he hated most had become the one person I didn't want to go a day without seeing. The irony wasn't lost on me. It never was. There was one evening I'll never forget. It had been a rainy day, steady, soft rain that made the world feel slower. I came over late, soaked through my hoodie, and Mr. Carter handed me a towel at the door. "You're drenched," he said, his voice laced with concern. "I needed some air," I shrugged, trying to shake the water off my sleeves. Didn't expect the rain to turn into a mood. He took my hoodie and tossed it into the dryer. Then he handed me one of his sweatshirts, navy blue, oversized, warm. It smelled like laundry detergent and something else that reminded me of comfort. We spent the evening like we usually did. Some soft music, Rocky curled between us, talking about everything and nothing. But that night felt different. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was just time. At one point, we were lying on the couch, facing each other. His hand was resting between us, and I traced the lines of his palm with my finger. "I think about you all the time," I said quietly. Like if I said it too loud, it might break the moment. He looked at me. Not surprised, not shocked, just gentle. "I think about you too." It was such a simple exchange, but it felt monumental. Later that night, as I pulled on my shoes to leave, he stopped me. "Jamie," he said, voice soft. "You don't have to go, you know, if you're comfortable staying." I hesitated. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew what that invitation meant. Not in a physical sense. We'd never rushed anything, and he'd never tried to. But staying meant vulnerability. Trust. Another door opening. I nodded. "Yeah, I'd like to stay." He pulled out fresh sheets and made up the bed in the guest room, but I didn't want to be apart from him. So we ended up in his room, lying on top of the covers, side by side, fully clothed. It wasn't like the scenes I'd seen in movies. There was no passionate undressing, no sweeping music, just quiet breathing, our fingers entwined, the glow of the bedside lamp painting soft shadows across the room. He kissed me once, just once, and it said more than words ever could. It wasn't lust, it wasn't impulsive. It was steady, tender, and full of something I wasn't used to being given. Care. We didn't do anything else that night, just held each other, listening to the rain tapping on the windows. I'd never shared a bed with someone like that before, with no expectations, no pressure, just warmth. I stared at the ceiling long after he fell asleep. My thoughts spun gently, like leaves in the wind. How strange it was to feel so at peace in the arms of the man my father could barely stand to speak to. But I wasn't thinking about rebellion. This wasn't about doing something I wasn't supposed to. This wasn't a teenage tantrum or a secret thrill. This was real. And even though we didn't talk about what it all meant, or what came next, I knew one thing for certain. I felt more myself with him than I ever had anywhere else. Somewhere along the line, I stopped calling it curiosity. It didn't happen in a single moment. It wasn't the first kiss or the first night I stayed over. It was the quiet accumulation of everything in between. The way he looked at me when I laughed. The way I felt when he opened the door and smiled like he'd been waiting for me all day. One afternoon, I came by after class. The house was quiet, the curtains pulled against the sun. Rocky greeted me at the door with a soft bark before curling back into his spot by the window. Mr. Carter was in the kitchen, drying his hands on a towel. He looked tired. Not worn out tired, just thoughtful, like his mind had been running in circles. "You all right?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, just thinking." We sat on the couch like we always did, but the air felt heavier, expectant. I rested my hands in my lap, unsure how to begin. "I've been thinking too," I said after a long pause. "About us." He turned to me, expression unreadable but attentive. "I don't think this is just curiosity," I continued, voice low. "I thought it was at first. I thought I was just figuring things out, but now I think I know." "And what do you know?" he asked gently. I looked at him, really looked at him. The small lines around his eyes, the hint of stubble on his jaw, the way he always tilted his head when he was fully listening. "That I care about you," I said. "More than I've ever cared about anyone. That this isn't something I can just walk away from and pretend didn't happen." His shoulders eased, like he'd been holding his breath. "I feel the same," he said. "I didn't expect to. Believe me, I didn't plan this, but it's real." We sat with that truth for a moment, both of us letting the weight of it settle in. "It scares me sometimes," I admitted. "Not what I feel, but how complicated it all is. The secrecy, the difference in our lives, the fact that my dad would probably blow a gasket if he knew." Mr. Carter gave a half smile, the kind that held both affection and sadness. "I think about that too. Every time I see him mowing the lawn like it's a battlefield." I chuckled despite myself. "He still thinks I'm just being neighborly." "Maybe you are," he said. "Just not in the way he imagined." We both laughed softly, but the seriousness lingered beneath it. "I don't know what the future looks like," I said. "I don't know how long we can keep this hidden or if we should. But I know what this feels like. And I don't want to lose it just because it doesn't fit into someone else's idea of what's normal." He reached over and took my hand, his fingers wrapping around mine with quiet assurance. "I don't need promises," he said. "I don't expect anything more than what you're ready to give. But I need you to know. This matters to me. You matter to me." There was something in his voice that made my chest tighten. Not pain, but gratitude. Like he didn't say those words often, but when he did, they meant everything. I leaned into him, resting my head on his shoulder. He pulled me closer, and we sat like that for a long time. No rush, no need for more. Just two people finding something, rare in a world that rarely makes space for it. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Maybe someone would find out. Maybe the world would get louder. But for now, there was only this moment. And I didn't want it to end. Time passed. And everything stayed the same, at least on the outside. I still came and went through the side gate like always. Still fed Rocky, watered the plants, and sometimes left just before my dad pulled into the driveway. But something inside me had shifted. I was no longer confused. This thing between me and Mr. Carter. It wasn't a phase or a secret thrill. It wasn't an identity crisis. It was something steady, something real. I didn't have all the answers, but I didn't feel lost anymore. I was just careful. Not because I was ashamed, but because the world wasn't always kind to things it didn't understand. And my dad, he would never understand. Not the age gap. Not the fact that it was a man, and definitely not that it was that man. He still talked about Mr. Carter like he was the worst thing to happen to our street. Every week there was a new complaint. Trash bins too close to the curb, music a little too loud, dog barking too early. It became background noise. Then came the final blow-up. It was a Saturday. I'd just gotten back from a late lunch at Mr. Carter's place, grilled sandwiches, iced tea, and soft jazz humming from the kitchen speakers. When I walked up the driveway, I saw my dad on the sidewalk, hands on his hips, voice raised. "You think this neighborhood belongs to you?" My dad snapped. "You park like you own the block." Mr. Carter stood with his arms crossed, perfectly calm. "I parked where I always do. You've had more space than you need. You're always pushing boundaries," Dad spat. "Ever since you moved in." Mr. Carter looked past him for a moment, his eyes meeting mine just briefly. I stood near our porch, one foot on the step, trying not to smile. "Boundaries work both ways," he said evenly. "You might try respecting mine sometime." I watched. My dad fume, red in the face, jaw clenched, pacing like he was ready to explode. I knew the script already. He'd grumble all night. My mom would roll her eyes. I'd nod along like I wasn't holding onto a secret that would change everything. If only he knew. If only he knew that the man he loathed was the same one who made me feel like I mattered. That while he was ranting about driveway lines, I was learning what it meant to be wanted. Not because I fit a mold, but because I was seen. But this wasn't about revenge. It never had been. This was about freedom. Quiet, personal freedom. The kind you carry in your chest like a secret flame. The kind you don't need to shout to believe in. Later that evening, when the sky turned orange and pink, I found myself walking back to Mr. Carter's place. The air was warm, and everything felt softer somehow, muted by the glow of dusk and the weight of something meaningful settling into place. He met me at the door like he always did, one hand on the frame, the other holding a coffee mug. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I echoed. We didn't need to talk much. He handed me the mug, and we sat on the back steps, watching the sun dip below the rooftops. Rocky snored at our feet. A breeze moved through the trees like a hush. I leaned into him, and he rested his head lightly against mine. No titles, no expectations, just us. Later, I walked home alone. Not because I had to, but because I liked that moment, the in-between, the soft return to my other world. I took the long way, letting the streetlights guide me. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was living a double life. I was just living my life. And even if the world never understood it, even if my dad never came close to knowing the truth, that was okay, because this story wasn't his, it was mine. And loving Mr. Carter didn't make sense to anyone else, but it made perfect sense to me.